When exploring the topic of divinity, it's useful to have at least a couple of metaphors to understand what we're referencing with this term divine. And when we understand that the whole, the unbroken one, the ecology, the totality of what is the divine, one of the best metaphors for the divine is the sphere. It is symmetrical, and it's one of the easiest metaphors for the one. Now, a cult, a system, an identity within the one is always angular. So the cult, the ego, the system that one is a part of, might be given the metaphor of the square. Now, to divine something, to transcend the identity that is angular, to return to the source, to the one, is to go outside the box, is to transcend the ego. Outside of the ego, outside of the cult, outside of the box, outside of the known, is the answer to all of our problems, is the spontaneous, effortless solution, is who we will be in 1,000 years. Everything magnificent, everything that is beyond what we can currently conceive of, is outside the box of the norm, of the cult. And it's useful. It's useful to ritualistically and practically invite that transcendence, to tap into that which is beyond the known order. Now, 99.999% of all that is beyond the known order. This square filling up so much of the circle is being generous to the ego. In fact, this square is a speck of a speck of a speck inside something much bigger, and we don't know how much we don't know. The unknown unknown is the biggest object that we can conceive of, and we can not conceive of it with any great clarity, because otherwise it would be the known unknown, which is a much smaller object, but we can look at things and say, yeah, I don't know that, I don't know that, I don't know that, I don't know that, but those things we know. The totality of what is vastly bigger than the known unknown. And so the important thing, the goal, is to cultivate the awareness that we are a part of all that is. We are a fractal representation of all that is. And what that means is that the whole, the one, is always trying to communicate to us, is always trying to reach out to us, is always around us and enfolding us. The one is everywhere. But within the framework of human consciousness, within the cuts and lines created by language, we don't feel that we're connected with all that is. We feel separate. We feel isolated. We don't recognize, we don't put together the unity that we are a part of. We feel separate, we feel alone, we act separate. We act alone. And the healing of that great wound, the wound of the illusion of that separation, is the single most important activity we can do as human beings. It is the greatest potential healing to restore the one, to remember that we are a part of it all, to feel that, to know that, to taste that. Now, to do that requires a certain amount of rule breaking, because it is the lines that we draw that create the separation. It requires a certain amount of rule breaking, a certain amount of transcendence. So that's what this dimension is about. It's incredibly liberating to be free of the tremendous amount of fear of the unknown and of chaos that dictates so much of the larger cult, such that as an independent cult that is not constantly afraid of being judged and criticized, because there's a container of safety and independence, there's a little bit more possibility to play with this dimension of what happens if we go here. And the key thing to understand is that the transcendent or divine state, a state of remembering the one that was broken by language, that was descended from into the knowledge, the naming of good and evil, that innocence is there waiting for our return. And so one of the ways to play with this, and obviously it's a lot safer when you've grown up around people you've come to know, their strengths, their weaknesses, etc., as personalities in your community. You're not engaging with complete strangers you know nothing about. You're engaging with people that you have a rapport with, a certain level of trust with. But by delineating the transcendent state, which is available in each person, there is a part of each person that has a sense of that connection to all that is. And that sense can lead us to the deepest medicine, the deepest healing. By creating some costumes, for example, whether it's a rainbow robe or whatever, it might be. It can be symbols that mean different things. You can have 5 or 6 costumes of divinity. But by creating costumes, when certain people enter a liminal state where they connect with some part of themselves that is more than the mundane ego they have been indoctrinated to identify with, they can don a costume and see where that energy of that which transcends the cult in this case of a 10X community, where does that take them? Does it take them into sound? Does it take them into touch? Where does it take them? And we don't know a lot about this terrain because we refuse to go anywhere near it in a fear-based, shame-based, perfectionistic, self-referential, dogmatic cult. We don't want to get anywhere near this terrain. And so in this dimension, it's about tracking what emerges. What are the, if once a week a random community member puts on the garments of the divine and lets energy move through them outside of the bounds of the cult, number one. Number two, and then has impact on the cult, on the community. Number three, then what is the impact of the entire community if that's tracked? I was afraid they were doing this and this and this, and then this happened, and then this happened, and I had this conversation that I would never have had without this. If that's tracked over a 1-year period, what is the impact of consciously inviting the transcendent divine into the community? And not pretending that one person is more divine than another, but rather allowing people at different points to identify, this is the divine in me, and put on the robe and express the divine through them in art, in healing, in song, in sound, in cooking, a divine dish. It's an exciting arena to explore. It's not the kind of place you're likely to enter depression and stay depressed, when you just might meet the divine walking in the body of your own self or another community member that day. That's a day worth getting out of bed for. And I can't wait to see the divine in you, walking towards me, taking a form that is outside the bounds of the programming of our cults.